Κυρίες και κύριοι, καλησπέρα σας. Είναι χαρά μου να σας καλωσορίζω στη σημερινή μας διαδικτυακή δήλωση. Επειδή μας παρακολουθούν προσκεκλημένοι από το εξωτερικό, αλλά και για να εξυπηρετηθούν οι ξένοι ομιλητές του σημερινού πάνελ, συνεχίζουμε το πρόγραμμά μας στα αγγλικά. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to Canada and good afternoon to Greece. Welcome to our webinar today and thank you for joining us. This is our 9th webinar in our Doing Business In series and our first virtual trade trip to Canada, a market with significant potential for Greek exporters. My name is Betty Alexandropoulou. I'm the Executive Director and member of the board at Enterprise Greece, the national export and investment promotion agency operating under the umbrella of the Hellenic Ministry of Foreign Affairs. This webinar series informs Greek companies on how to access and expand their international sales to key export markets. We organize them in cooperation with the Economic and Commercial Affairs offices of Greek diplomatic missions abroad. Greek exports have been growing steadily over the last decade. As the country's economy has become more competitive, exporters have expanded their presence in overseas markets and consumers have become increasingly familiar with the quality of Greek products. Despite the global downturn stemming from the coronavirus pandemic, Greek exports showed remarkable resilience in 2020, rising by a small percentage of 3.2% excluding petroleum products. Food and chemical exports were the champions of this. With regards to Canada, Greek exports are, for the moment, modest. But Canada, with a stable and prosperous economy, high consumer spending, and sophisticated consumers looking for high-quality products, is a market with great potential. In addition, CETA, the trade agreement between Canada and the European Union, has opened up new opportunities between our two countries. A brief overview of the export opportunities is as follows. Greek olives, virgin olive oil, and pharmaceuticals for retail sale show the greatest export potential for the Canadian market. The worldwide focus on health and well-being this past year, as well as Greece's reputation for high-quality food products, is an additional opportunity for Greek agricultural exports. Also, Greece's fine wines, which were just profiled in the New York Times a few days ago, have already gained recognition in the Canadian market. On this occasion, I would like to stress that this year Enterprise Greece is building on this momentum, specifically in Canada, with a special promotion program for Mount Athos wines, the medieval monastic community in northern Greece. This three-year, €500,000 program aims at increasing awareness and upgrading the brand to Canada, with a target to almost double its exports by the end of 2023. Of course, all Greek wines and the Greek F&B sector is expected to benefit from these promotional campaigns run by other organizations as well. Canada also represents a major export opportunity for Greek pharmaceuticals. Greece is already a leading regional producer and major exporter of pharmaceuticals. In addition, its natural health and beauty products are showing great export potential around the world. As we begin a new year and amid medical breakthroughs, 2021 paves the way for expansion of overall trade relations between Greece and Canada. Although food, wine, and pharmaceuticals have great potential, I would also like to highlight Greece's fast-emerging technology and innovation sector, as well as our design and creative industries. Greece is making great strides in these areas and is developing new export sectors. At this point, I will move on to pass the floor to our distinguished guests and speakers. We are very happy to have with us today Her Excellency, Ms. Konstantina Athanasiadou, Ambassador of Greece to Canada, who will address welcoming remarks. Following our Ambassador, Mrs. Dimitra Schina, First Secretary at the Greek Office for Economic and Commercial Affairs at the Greek Embassy in Ottawa, will provide an overview of the Canadian market. We thank Mrs. Schina for her contribution in co-organizing this event with Enterprise Greece. Also with us today, we have prominent speakers from the delegation of the European Union in Canada, as well as members of the Greek and Canadian business communities. Ms. Marta Middlebrough, Trade Counselor from the delegation of the European Union to Canada, who will speak on the CETA implementation will provide important insights for our audience. Mr. Steve Kriadis, President of Kolonaki Group of Companies, and Dr. Caitlin Peterson, Executive Director, German-Canadian Center for Innovation and Research. Without further ado, I now pass the floor to Her Excellency Ambassador Konstantina Athanasiadou. Thank you. Ms. Athanasiadou, the floor is yours.
Καλημέρα σας από την Οτάβα. Μείον 10 σήμερα και περίπου 10 η ώρα το πρωί. Θα μου επιτρέψετε να συνεχίσω στα αγγλικά. Good morning to all. I'm the ambassador of Greece to Canada, and it's a pleasure to address such a distinguished audience. The Foreign Ministry of Greece is very supportive of such events, and I wanted to congratulate Enterprise Greece and my own commercial office for making it happen. I hope that many others will follow. I will tell you a few words about why this event is important. We share excellent relations with Canada. Greece and Canada are having the same views, not only on the bilateral level, but also on the multilateral level. Canada is home to hundreds of thousands of Greeks. They contribute to everyday's life in Canada. They are contributing to the political as well as the business life. And I think that this is a very important bridge between the two countries. In what concerns commercial relations, as a Greek, the things I'm telling to people on Greek products and ingenuity have to do with the authenticity of the Greek products. We are a small-scale production in Greece. Care and personal interest in our production makes a delicate product with a particular taste and quality, and we are proud to present it in third countries and in third markets. Our new generations, as well as the elders, they are ingenious people. They are known for that. Innovation today is one of the prime perspectives of our world, especially under the present circumstances, and we need to support them as much as possible. I could talk about the beauty of Greece. I could talk about the beauty of Canada. Canada is a big country with a market which is very elegant to our Greek interests. Now, over the last few years, we are having a new agreement between the European Union and Canada, and I believe that all our efforts could produce more results to it. So without more to say, I wanted to tell you that we expect concrete results to come out of this meeting today. Again, I congratulate everybody making it possible, and I hope that we will have a flow of revived interest in order to further strengthen our bilateral economic and trade relations. Thank you very much.
Good morning to all. As the ambassador stated, Canada is a market with a lot of potential for the Greek companies. I will give you a general overview of the market, and I will focus on the main ways of exporting your products to Canada. So in the first slide, I gathered some basic facts. As you know, Canada is the second largest country in the world by land mass. It consists of 10 provinces and 3 territories. It has an extensive transport network. Therefore, commerce is conducted smoothly. Canada has more than 300 ports. The port of Vancouver Metro is the largest one. It accounts for much of Canada's oil trade and effectively monopolizes trade with Asia. On the Atlantic side, there are the international ports of Montreal and Halifax, the comparative advantage of which is the proximity of complementary means of transport. Canada has natural resources and significant mineral reserves. Agriculture industry is very strong, as Canada is one of the largest agricultural producers and exporters in the world. Manufacturing industry is diversified and innovative in a variety of fields, including aerospace, biotechnology, chemicals and plastics, health, agriculture, and environment. The technological wealth is powered by a network of leading universities and specialized technology centers. The industrial sector accounts for 25% of Canada's GDP. Finally, the services sector is the most important part of the Canadian economy and contributes about 2/3 of GDP. 4 out of 5 Canadians work in the tertiary sector, especially in IT, telecommunications, financial and insurance services. Toronto is an international financial center, competing with Montreal. The largest metropolitan areas are Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver. And now a few things about the macroeconomic data of the Canadian economy. Before COVID-19, Canada had the strongest economy amongst the group of G7. The GDP reached 2 trillion Canadian dollars and the inflation rate was around 2%. The federal government debt was low, formed at 31%. The unemployment rate was also low at 5.7%, and the key interest rate was steady at 1.75%. When coronavirus started, there were a lot of challenges for the federal government. It enacted a series of measures in March 2020 in order to immediately address the economic consequences of the pandemic. Expenditure on implementing these measures has led to a significant increase of the budget deficit, which has exceeded 407 billion Canadian dollars, equivalent to 19% of GDP. It is expected that the federal government debt reaches 50% in 2021, a percentage considered viable by the government, given that the interest rates are kept at a low level until 2024. Just a brief mention to the key interest rate. Since March 2020, the Bank of Canada has cut its key interest rate 3 times, reaching 0.25% to make lending more attractive and boost consumption and investment. The ultimate goal was to support the financial system and lay the foundations for an economic recovery. This was a necessary measure, which was imposed due to the financial burden of the coronavirus, but also due to the significant reduction in oil prices. In this slide, you can see the main free trade agreements that Canada is part of. The one that is of utmost importance for us is CETA agreement, the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement between Canada and EU. Ms. Mittelbrow, our next speaker, is the expert on it. I will briefly mention that since September 21, 2017, it has been provisionally applied, removing 98% of the pre-existing tariffs between the two parties. Here, I'll make a parenthesis to tell you that there is a free and easy-to-use online tool called Canada Tariff Finder, where you may find information on customs duties on goods from countries that have a free trade agreement with Canada. An important aspect of CETA agreement is the high level of protection in distinct products of geographical indication, among which there are 16 Greek products. In order to be able to export to Canada without taxes, you have to be a registered exporter, REX. First, you need to complete an application found on the link you see on the screen. And then the competent customs authority will provide you with a number that you have to use when you export to Canada. Since October 2020, a new EU portal is in place in view of facilitating European companies to enter foreign markets, such as the Canadian one. One of its key features is the tool for self-assessment of the rules of origin of exported products, called ROSA, Rules of Origin Self-Assessment Tool. Apart from CETA, Canada has signed also CUSMA with USA and Mexico, which is in force since July 2020. It is basically NAFTA's successor. In addition, Canada is part of the CPTPP agreement, Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, which came into force in December 2018. Canada has also signed a provisional trade agreement with United Kingdom in November 2020, allowing the two partners to continue their bilateral trade without hindrance on the same terms as within CETA agreement. As for Canada's international trade of goods and services, I will simply mention that it reaches about 1 trillion Canadian dollars each year in goods, with a deficit of around 20 billion, and $300 billion in services, with a deficit of 21 billion. Now, let us move on to our bilateral trade. The trade volume between Greece and Canada is around 200 million euro. There are lots of opportunities to increase our exports, which represented only 0.54% of our total exports last year. Despite the drop in our trade volume, Greek exports increased by 8.46% in 2020 compared to 2019, while Canadian exports to Greece declined by 32.18%. The main Greek products exported to Canada are fruit and vegetable, chemical products, pharmaceuticals, and fish. In general, Canada is one of the most important destinations for national food and agricultural products, such as extra virgin olive oil, olives, sea bream and sea bass, cheese, wine, canned peaches, fruit and vegetables, and many more. The main products imported to Greece from Canada include legumes, soybeans, fossil fuels, waste and scrap, paper and paperboard. Between the Hellenic Republic and Canada, there is a convention for the avoidance of double taxation and the prevention of fiscal evasion with respect to taxes on income and on capital, which entered into force in December 2010. It should be noted there is no bilateral agreement on protection of investments. Therefore, the provisions on investment protection and dispute resolution contained in the CETA agreement in chapters 29 and 8 are of particular importance to both Greek investors in Canada and Canadian investors in Greece. Market access. When considering accessing the Canadian market, you should first ask the question, from which province do I start? The choice of province is very important because each one has different comparative advantages. For example, if you choose Alberta, you have to keep in mind that the energy sector is quite strong, new technologies and biotechnology too. In Quebec, there is a great growth in the fields of aerospace, information and communication technologies, audiovisual media, health and biotechnology, environment, consumer goods, food, mining, and hydroelectric power. Once you have selected the province in which you wish to do business, you need to look for distribution channels as well as a suitable partner. You can choose between a representative or distributor. Traditionally, the company representative is responsible for promoting and selling the products of the company he represents in Canada. He may represent one or more foreign suppliers with or without an exclusive distribution agreement. His advantage is the very good knowledge of the market as well as the extensive network of contacts he has. On the other hand, the imported distributor is traditionally active at provincial level and rarely at federal level. He buys the foreign goods under Canadian law before storing and distributing them. He can agree with the exporter to share the risks of importing and selling the products. Otherwise, he is solely responsible for any problems that may arise in connection with the goods. He is also responsible for after-sale service. Due to his strong presence in the market, the distributor has clear advantages compared to the company's representative. However, given Canada's size and provincial specificity, it is preferable to cooperate with different provincial agents who specialize in each market. If you wish to have a permanent presence in Canada, a good way to do that is by establishing a branch or a subsidiary. The form of a subsidiary is the one mostly preferred by foreign companies. The subsidiary may be under federal or provincial jurisdiction. It can also apply for registration outside the province in order to be allowed to operate in other provinces other than the province of its initial registration. The branch is essentially an extension of the parent company without distinct legal personality. To establish a branch, the company must submit an application as a foreign or extra-provincial in the province where it intends to operate. You also need to state an address in Canada and give the contact details of a representative, usually a lawyer, who will receive documents and deal with administrative matters. Under Canadian tax law, branch annual taxes are about 25% of the profits. Joint venture is not a legal entity in Canada. It is a business partnership, which is regulated differently depending on its activity, the form it takes, and the jurisdiction to which it belongs. In Canada, the distribution of consumer products takes place through a well-organized network. There are large chain stores such as Loblaws, Metro, Shoppers, Drug Mart, Canadian Tire, LCBO, Walmart. Intense competition leads to frequent promotional offers. Private label products are also available, which are sold at competitive prices. All store chains have an e-commerce platform. The pandemic has accelerated the growth of e-commerce, and now it is common to have the products delivered at your address, a practice that was not popular prior to the pandemic. In addition to hypermarkets and grocery stores, there are many malls and also points of sale in every neighborhood, but with a limited variety of products. Promoting products and services in the Canadian market comes in a variety of ways. Television plays an important role, as the average Canadian spends about 4.2 hours a day in front of his television. Despite the widespread use of the internet, television remains a means of mass communication and advertising. Promoting products and services can come in other ways too, through radio, regular mail, or email. E-marketing is the one holding an extremely important place in the promotion of products, with increasing trends, since each household spends about 49 hours a month surfing the internet, either via computer or via mobile phone. In order to get a concrete idea about what each province and territory has to offer and which body you can come in touch with, it is suggested to follow the link on your screen. It opens a series of webinars organized by the European Chamber of Commerce, UCAN, during 2020. In general, Canada has a lot of potential for Greek exporters in many sectors, mainly in the food sector, where the demand for organic products is rapidly increasing. In addition, there are huge possibilities in the energy sector, especially clean energy, as well as in technology. As for the latter, let me point out that it has benefited significantly because of the pandemic. There have been improvements in the legal framework favoring the great development of innovative technology products and new business ideas. The field is quite promising, even for Greek companies, which may benefit from the favorable legal framework through partnerships with Canadian companies. For a first taste of the Canadian market, it is advisable to participate in important trade shows. In this context, your product or service becomes known to the consumers, and at the same time, there is interaction with professionals in the field. Of course, due to the pandemic, most international exhibitions were held online in 2020, while some were cancelled or postponed for 2021. CIAL is the main food and beverage trade show. It is held annually, alternately in Toronto and Montreal. It was postponed several times last year until it went online in the fall. This year, it will take place in Toronto from September 21 to 23. Another important trade show in food sector is CPMA, Fruit and Vegetable Exhibition, to be held in April. In the field of renewable energy sources, there is Electricity Transformation Canada to be held in November, while in the field of innovation and technology, BC Tech in Vancouver and Collision in Toronto are very popular. In this slide, I would like to briefly focus on public procurement. CETA Agreement, Chapter 19, provides for access to public procurement at all levels of government, federal, provincial, territorial, and municipal. So far, there is no single electronic point of access, but Canada has committed to setting it up by September 21, 2022. At present, information on public procurement at federal level is available on the government website Buy and Sell. At provincial territorial level, public tenders are posted on the Free Provinces and Territories Free Trade Agreement, CFTA. Public tenders announced by some municipalities are also posted there. Apart from this, you can see other links where information about public tenders is available. In order to be able to submit a bid in a tender, you should register to the Supplier Registration Information System, SRI, and obtain a procurement business number. Finally, allow me to conclude the presentation with a kiss. When accessing Canadian market, keep in mind that you should keep the negotiations with your Canadian partners small and simple. Canadians are straightforward, clear, and polite. They use gentle expressions, they love honesty, and they hate unnecessary talk and complicated expressions, as well as excessive flattery and compliments. The communication is mainly based on written texts. The discussion, negotiation, and finally the signing of the agreement is achieved according to a specific timetable, while the legal support and assistance of experts like legal advisors, accountants, sales consultants is highly recommended. Thank you for your attention. I'm passing now the floor to Mrs. Martha Middlebrough, Trade Councillor at the Delegation of the European Union in Canada.
So good morning, good afternoon. Thank you very much. It's great to be here with you and to be able to tell you a little bit more about the Canada-EU Free Trade Agreement that Dimitra has already mentioned. Right, so what I'd like to do in my presentation today, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about the agreement and the state of play, to give you a little bit of a flavor of how the implementation is going by looking at some trade figures over the past few years, but also talk about what the impact of COVID-19 has been on EU-Canada and Greek-Canada trade. And finally, I'm going to leave you with some more links with resources for EU exporters who would like to access the Canadian market. So the Canada-EU Free Trade Agreement, or CETA, it's a little bit of a mouthful, so we just call it CETA. It's a state-of-the-art agreement between the EU and Canada. So it opens up the EU market to Canada, and it opens up all of the Canadian market for all of the members of the European Union. We call it a state-of-the-art because it removes 99% of all tariffs on goods and also facilitates trade in services, in investment. I'm just going to give you a brief overview, but please, by all means, ask me a question if you'd like a bit of a deeper dive into any of the specific areas of the agreement. Some of the things we like to highlight or mention is that the point of the agreement is to make it cheaper and easier to export. So we don't just try to remove the tariffs on goods, but there are other provisions of the agreement that go alongside the liberalization, such as mutual recognition of standardization and testing. It's very important to have the right certificates to come and import into Canada. Plus, the agreement also provides for mobility of business people and intra-corporate transferees, which is another important factor in being able to sell your products and services to Canada. As Dimitra has already spoken about, it also opens the procurement markets. This is a rather important feature of CETA because it opens government procurement, not just at the federal, but also the sub-federal and the municipal level. So CETA actually offers access to procurement, which is better than any other trading partner of Canada. So Europeans, us Europeans, we actually have better access to the Canadian market than even Americans. So this is a really quite an exciting feature of the agreement that we hope that our operators will be able to take up. Because we remove a lot of the tariffs, the agreement leads to lower prices for consumers and more choice. It also layers additional protections on top of opening markets, such as protecting some of our very, very distinctive products that are key exports from the European Union, including some very, very distinctive agricultural products. In the Greek context, think feta. And last but not least, it's important to say that the trade agreement also respects the high standards on environmental and labor protection on both sides. This is rather easy because when we talk about EU and Canada, we talk about two very like-minded partners with similar outlook on public policy. But we find that it is very important to say that our trade agreements do not diminish the standards of environmental and social protection, and in fact try to promote them abroad. Now, where are we in terms of implementation? So CETA was provisionally applied in September 2017, so we're about 3.5 years in. Let me clarify, what does it mean, provisionally applied? People sometimes are confused. It is a legal term, but effectively what it means is that the vast majority of the provisions of the agreement are applied. You have the legal certainty that they are applied. You have the legal certainty that the facilities and the preferences that are contained in the agreement will apply to you. The only section of the agreement which is not applied yet is investment and investment protection, including dispute settlement relating to investment matters. If you are interested in investing into the Canadian market, this is something that you have to keep in mind. It is part of the agreement. However, it can only start applying once every single member state in the EU ratifies the agreement in its own national parliament, which has not happened yet. We are now at 15 out of 27 member states who have ratified. So if you are considering investing, keep this in mind, that this has not come on stream yet, but will later. In terms of implementation, what we are doing now is we are working to try and ensure the widest possible take-up of the agreement, including through opportunities like these. I haven't actually properly introduced myself. I work as a trade counsellor at the European Union delegation to Canada. In the European system, trade policy, including the negotiation of trade agreements, is done at one European level on behalf of all member states. But trade promotion and implementation of agreements obviously is done together with everybody. So we work very hand in hand in this case with the Greek embassy and the Greek commercial office, including through events like these to try and inform our operators of the opportunities that the agreement brings, so that we don't just have an agreement which looks beautiful on paper, but so that people actually realize what the Canadian market has to offer and how the agreement can help access it. There's also some ongoing work within the sort of almost negotiation of the agreement, in that there are some areas which were designed to be sort of living and evolving areas of the agreement. One of the big examples is mutual recognition of professional qualifications, meaning that if you have a professional qualifications, think legal qualifications, architecture, business consultants, if you have them recognized by a professional body on one side of the Atlantic, you can then take those qualifications and bring them to the other jurisdiction. This is something that we are still working on, and very, very shortly we should have our first area and a first sort of a test case whereby Canada and EU would mutually recognize the qualifications of architects. Now, once this is done, and we are hoping that later on this year this will be finished, it should have a great facilitating role for two-way trade in services in the area of architecture. Now, I understand that I will have to speed up a little bit. I'm going to give you a few slides with numbers on the take-up of CETA. How does trade look before and after CETA? Here, you can see 2016, 17, 18, and 19. I deliberately kept 2020, our COVID year, for a little bit later. But you can see that there is a clear rising trend in both EU exports and EU imports. And then there's a sort of a significant boom once CETA is in application. Here you see the same numbers, but in a table form. So you can see that year on year, every single year, we see increases. 3 years in is actually relatively sort of young for a trade agreement, but compared to others, this is exactly what we would like to see. These are all of the good signs that importers and exporters are there and they are using the agreements. We also look at another measure, which is the preference utilization rate, which is a slightly more complicated calculation, which looks at how many people, or sorry, how many operators, exporters, actually use the preferential tariff rate which is offered by the agreement. and those are again increasing. So we know that the agreement is being used. There are certain areas where we still have more to go, but it is good news. Dimitra has already told you and done a great job in outlining the main products traded between EU and Canada and Greece and Canada. So I'm going to go a little faster here. Here you can see the same thing for trade in services. The previous slides were for trade in goods. Again, we can see a nice increasing trend, especially for EU export. Here you can see that Canada is not actually doing as well as the EU is doing. The EU seems to be getting a little bit more out of the agreement on the services side than Canada for now. I would just point out that here, these numbers, they only show you trade in goods and trade in services. Now, that's obviously a big part of our bilateral trading relationship, but we also have to keep in mind that there's value in the agreement in areas that are far more difficult to quantify. Going back again to the example of public procurement, it's much more difficult to get data on procurement access and signed procurement agreements and sort of quantify the impact of the agreement. And there, it's much more difficult to put in numbers and percentages the impact of cooperation on regulatory matters and on, for example, agreeing to mutually recognize certain standardization and testing. Again, difficult to quantify, but we do know from anecdotal evidence from business that these are very important parts of the agreement. Now, let's have a quick look at the COVID impact on EU-Canada trade. A little disclaimer. So this is numbers for 2020. These are provisional numbers. The final numbers should actually be coming out in the next few days. So this is a bit of an unfortunate timing, but however, they should not be far off. So you can see that EU trade, both in terms of imports and exports, went down by about 12% in 2020 compared to 2019, if you look at all partners, so EU with the world. Then if you look at EU-Canada trade on the export side, it pretty much copies that trend. The import side it was not as heavily hit. However, when you then drill down a little bit into the numbers, we have 99 chapters of like categories of goods in the tariff nomenclature, and good 2/3 of those chapters on both the import and the export side saw significant decreases in between 2019 and 2020. So you can see that the impact, the negative impact of the pandemic on trade has really been widespread. Perhaps a slightly better illustration is this graph where you can see the monthly numbers. So the red line on the bottom, they are imports from Canada into the EU. The gray one in the middle, they are EU exports to Canada, and then the total on top is the yellow line. You can see in the beginning of the year, so the lockdown kicked in March. You can see a big slump in April, May. At that time, this is when most of the decrease actually happened. There was a lot of uncertainty about what the pandemic actually looked like, how dangerous COVID was. There was an awful lot of uncertainty in terms of transport and logistics, and the sort of meshing of public health rules together with transport. Are pilots allowed to come in without quarantining, those sorts of questions. So there was really a big slump in the beginning of the year. We can then see that from June, July, there is a recovery. And by December, we are pretty close to the pre-COVID numbers, not quite there yet, but improving. Overall, in all of the sort of up and down, you can see that the trade evolution it copies the GDP numbers on both sides, so both in the EU and in Canada. And generally speaking, whenever there is a weakening of output, usually linked with a lockdown, there's an pretty immediate consequence on imports and exports as well. But as I said, we see that trade is recovering. The economies are also recovering on both sides. So let's try our best to see the silver lining and see whether there is an opportunity in COVID and COVID recovering. So I think we can see that there are distinct changes in the Canadian market opportunities that are there for EU operators and for Greek exporters. There's been a lot of political talk about the so-called reshoring or nearshoring, meaning the idea that key strategic production should be taking place in Canada, especially when it comes to health products. We actually haven't seen any evidence that any of that is actually happening, and in fact, Canada continues to source very, very widely. Now, I would say that there is a real opportunity for EU exporters in certain areas linked to COVID recovery. The government is talking about big infrastructure investments and big investments in the so-called green transition, which will be a big opportunity for renewable energy, clean technology, where the European Union is a leader, and also sustainable agriculture. We can see that in terms of consumer preferences, there has been a big shift towards demand towards organic, small batch agriculture. There's a far more recognition of the place of origin of goods and the link between health benefits of origin of agriculture and cosmetic goods. And all of these consumer trends and the changing market trends really play into the hand of EU exporters and also Greek exporters, who have a long tradition in providing quality agricultural, cosmetic, and pharmaceutical products. So I would actually argue that this shift in preferences is an opportunity. And going back to what now must seem as my favorite topic of public procurement markets, the government plans for massive COVID recovery spending, especially in infrastructure, should be announced at the forthcoming budget, which should come at the end of this month or early next month. And we are expecting billions of Canadian dollars worth of investments into green technology, energy efficiency of buildings, and so on. Once again, providing an opportunity and perhaps a new opportunity for Greek exporters to really take advantage of that edge that EU does have in those new technologies, that very, very often the Canadian local competitors are comparatively weaker, and to take advantage of the access to public procurement that CETA facilitates and bid on these large government procurement contracts. And I will leave it here at this point. All I will do is just leave you with a few links. I believe that the slides will be shared. The biggest database is sort of a one-stop shop for help for European exporters with accessing markets, including Canada, is what we call the Access to Markets database. It has information on not just tariffs, rules of origin, other rules and regulations you might need to comply with while you're importing, any sorts of certificates. It has tax information, VAT information. It really is a one-stop shop. This is the link to the database. It does offer a lot in a lot of different areas, so it also gives you an opportunity to do a little bit of a virtual training and a tour. Take a tour. There might be a lot of information that's useful for you. And I will also leave you a couple of links that lead you to guides and webinars that are specific for the Canadian market and the way that CETA facilitates access to the Canadian market. There's a whole host of exporters guides, so that's the first link, and also exporters webinars. We have two different links. We talk about nitty-gritty things, but very useful things like rules of origin or movement of business people, for example. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm now going to hand over to the next presenter. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you again for having me today. I'm very excited to be here. My entire team was actually talking about this in yesterday's conference calls, and it's a great opportunity for us to discuss the products of Greece before, during, and after a pandemic, which is a very important key part, I'd like to say, for what's happening in the market here. Just get onto this. My name is Steve Kyriadis. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the president and CEO of a company called Kolonaki Group. We've been importing fine foods, beverages, and everything to do with Greek gastronomy for the last 20 years. We've also delved heavily into the Greek wine and spirit and beer category as well, and that's gone quite well for us. My slide today is a little bit about doing business in Canada with Greek products and where Greek products were in the past, where they are today, and where they're going to be in the future. The good news is everything is very positive, and we see positive signs everywhere for that matter. Let me just get onto my slide here. Okay, so a little quick breakdown about who we are as a company. Kolonaki Group is now called the Kolonaki Group of Companies. We're established in 2000, so it's now our 21st year of business. We're the leading importer of craft wine, spirits, beers, premier foods and beverages for curated lifestyle items in Canada. We realized a market need for quality artisan foods and beverages and homewares from Greece and the Mediterranean. And now we've been divided up into 3 divisions. Kolonaki Fine Wines and Spirits is a beverage alcohol agency that works nationally coast to coast now. Our Kolonaki Fine Foods and Beverages is a strictly non-alcoholic segment of our business for consumption of fine foods and beverages. And we're about to launch our Kolonaki Fine Lifestyle sector for our company, which is mainly around housewares, eno-tourism, agro-tourism, etc., and everything that has to do with the fine lifestyle and Greece abroad. Pandemic challenges that we've been facing. One of the things that we all realized very early on was how reliant Greek food, beverages, wine, spirits, etc., were relying heavily on the restaurant industry. So when restaurants shut down, obviously there was a big drop in sales for all of the Greek fine foods, beverages, etc. The good news is we've rebounded within a matter of 90 days, and we managed to get listings in many different supermarkets all across the nation. As a company, I can speak as a company, our fine food and beverage sales last year in 2020 were up actually 80%, which is an outstanding number for us, and we're very excited about that because it shows that Greek wines, food, beverages are all here to stay, and everyone's quickly shifting towards everything we've been building on for the last 5 years. Reduced global movement disruption and global shipping delays. So as we all know, there's been shipping delays everywhere around the world, and still to this day, and it doesn't seem to end. There's port strikes, etc. So having inventory flow into Canada has been a bit of a challenge for us. Luckily, we work with quite a few great importers and shipping companies that have helped us get our products here as timely as humanly possible. And the traditional distribution channels in the past don't always work during the pandemic. And a lack of e-commerce for availability of Greek products was another challenge. But the nice thing is that everything we do as a company is all set up on e-commerce platform built on Shopify. And so the online platform of our business has grown by 4 times in the last 12 months. And it just keeps growing nonstop for us because everyone's sitting at home, obviously, during lockdowns, and they're all on their mobile devices and stuff, and they're all shopping online, picking up products from our websites, and then we're delivering to their home or offices pretty much on a 7-day-a-week cycle, which is sort of exciting for all of us as well. Next slide. So again, pandemic opportunities is diversifying distribution channels. As I said, being on Shopify has been a huge plus for us because it's allowed us to grow our brand across Canada and ship into the US market, which is exciting. We've listed our fine foods and beverages onto Amazon for Canada, Amazon for the US, and now Amazon for Mexico. So that's been a huge boost in our sales as well. The greater presence of recession pandemic food businesses, i.e. grocery stores, supermarkets, big box retailers, and liquor boards, has been a saving grace, if you will, for many different producers. So whoever has listings at the liquor boards, as far as wine and spirits go, they've seen an uptick in sales across the board. Grocery stores, supermarkets, and big box retailers have been buying up products left, right, and center because they can barely keep up with the existing demand they have in the supermarket. So it's been an opportunity for us to showcase over the last 12 months many of our products and get listings everywhere across the country. And that has helped drive our non-alcoholic sector quite high. And my next slide is basically food for thought, pandemic or not. So it's a more global perspective. So one of the things that we always see with Greek suppliers versus non-Greek suppliers is that Greek suppliers don't always have a export strategy as a company. So I think it's very important that Greek manufacturers and suppliers start to look at developing their export market more. Typically, when we speak to Greek suppliers, they mention that their exports are less than 10% of their total overall production. When I speak to suppliers from other European countries like Italy and France, etc., for them, if their exports doesn't consist of, say, 40% of their overall sales, they consider that to be a failing business model and that they need to increase their exports globally around the world. I mean, it's not an easy challenge, obviously. It happens over time, but I do believe that a bigger export model needs to be taken on from a lot of the producers in Greece. Marketing investment, it's a huge, so the North American psychology is very important because we need to understand what the North American consumers are looking for in products. And we have to always take the products that we do look at from Greece and try and get into the mindset of the North American consumer. Just because we make this beautiful little product made from a wonderful fruit from somewhere in northern Greece, it doesn't mean that that product has the ability to grow into the North American market. So I do believe that everything needs to be looked at from the inside out. So the producers need to always look to put themselves in the shoes of the Canadian consumer and the Canadian buyers, etc., and what they're looking for here in the market. So marketing materials and language other than Greek is obviously a big one for English. And a big factor that's coming along nicely now is compliant labels, compliant packaging. That's a huge thing because without that, you can never become a national brand or you can never become listed in national chains across the country. And lastly, the move forward is to always try and partner with import distributors who have diverse distribution channels, on-premise, online, recession-proof businesses, etc. So that's it for my presentation, I do believe. Yeah, so thank you for having me on this. And I think there was a question that I had to answer for everyone. If we can confirm that.
There will be a Q&A session at the end.
Thank you. I'll pass it on to the next speaker.
All right. So firstly, thank you very much for having me here today. My name is Caitlin Peterson. I'm the Executive Director of the German-Canadian Centre for Innovation and Research. And I'm going to present to you some resources that we have for connecting Canadian and European companies. Now, you may be wondering why it is that the German-Canadian Centre is presenting at a webinar looking to facilitate trade between Greece and Canada. But there's a couple of streams of activity that we have that are relevant to all of Europe. And so I'll speak about those in particular today. So very broadly speaking, the mandate of GCCIR is to connect connections between Europe and Canada in business, industry, and academia. So we help to identify potential opportunities, both in research and in business, and we help to establish and facilitate relationships for companies and research organizations. The two streams of activity that I will speak about that are relevant to all of Europe are the Alberta Europe Technology Collaboration Fund, as well as the Enterprise Europe Network Canada. So firstly, I'll speak about the Alberta Europe Technology Collaboration Fund. And on the Canadian side, this is a bilateral program. So on the Canadian side, it's specific to the province of Alberta. So it's for Albertan SMEs as well as European SMEs working together with Albertan SMEs for pre-commercial technology development projects. The funding comes to GCCIR through the Provincial Ministry of Jobs, Economy and Innovation, and this is a program administered by GCCIR. So Albertan companies who have found technology development partners in Europe can apply to us for up to $250,000 Canadian, and they are required to match whatever they request in funding. On the European side, SMEs and research and technology organizations or research and teaching organizations are able to apply in their respective jurisdictions they can apply for funding to support their side of the projects from either regional or national funding bodies, or they're welcome to self-fund, and the Albertan company can still receive support on our side. Now, this is one of many, many programs that's available to support research and development, as well as commercial cooperation between Canadian companies and European companies. And this is the one that I know best, so it's the one that I'm presenting about. But for European companies who have Canadian partners in provinces other than Alberta, there are also options there too, for example, through our National Research Council. So don't despair if your partner is not in Alberta. I'd also like to speak a little bit about the Enterprise Europe Network Canada. So I'm sure many of you are already familiar with the Enterprise Europe Network. It's the world's largest support network for SMEs with international ambitions. And countries outside of the European Union can put together consortia to represent their countries in the Enterprise Europe Network. And that's what GCCIR did, together with the EU Chamber of Commerce in Canada West in Vancouver and the EU Chamber of Commerce in Toronto. So as was mentioned earlier, the Canadian provinces are sometimes very big, and they're all very different. So it's important for us to have representation across the country, and that's what we're trying to achieve in our consortium. So the Enterprise Europe Network comprises 3,000 local experts in over 600 locations in over 60 countries. So it really, while it is a European initiative, it really is a worldwide network, and we're very pleased to be a part of it. It offers a broad range of services for SMEs, everything from international partnerships, which can be facilitated through the partnership database, through brokerage events, and through company missions. Obviously, in times of COVID, company missions aren't quite what they used to be, but there are numerous brokerage events that are available for both European and Canadian companies to take part in. The EEN also provides significant advisory support around EU laws and standards, as well as Canadian laws and standards, market intelligence, as well as IP expertise. And we can also provide support and advice around innovation and access to funding. There are 17 key sectors represented within the network. So we have what are called sector groups, where individual network members, so myself, for example, or my colleagues, can take part in a specific sector group and do a deeper dive into the needs and opportunities in that particular sector. So as you'll see, they're fairly comprehensive. So the activities of most companies are covered by one of the sector groups. Our day-to-day activities at EEN Canada comprise a number of different activities, but it's primarily partnering and answering inquiries. So if you have a question about Canada, the best way to do that is probably to go through your local Enterprise Europe Network representative. So I would encourage all of the Greek companies watching today to find out who's the local EEN representative in your jurisdiction, and maybe just get in touch with them, reach out to them, let them know what you're doing and what you're interested in. And if you have specific questions, they can forward those questions to us at the Enterprise Europe Network Canada, or really to any of the other markets that you're interested in. In case you're not familiar with it, the Partnership Opportunities Database administered by the Enterprise Europe Network allows you to put up profiles detailing what your company does and what it's interested in achieving, what kind of partnerships you would like to find, what capacities you'd like to find in a partner. So you're able to put in business offers or requests to say that you have a product, or you have a business offer, or alternately you're looking for something. You can do research and development requests, which are always tied to a specific call for proposals, or you can do technology offers or requests and say, my company has a technology that we would like to offer, or alternately, if you're trying to develop a technology and you need another piece, this will allow you to request that and then to find a partner that can provide you what you're looking for. We also organize the brokerage events that I mentioned before, as well as hopefully again one day trade missions, and then conferences and workshops around different topics that are relevant to Canada-Europe trade and business. So we've only been around since June 2020 as Enterprise Europe Network Canada, but we're pleased with the results that we've seen so far. So we were able to extend our consortium to include the entire country. In addition to the 3 consortium members that I mentioned earlier, we've also added the Ocean Technology Council of Nova Scotia as a local cooperation partner in the maritime region of Canada. We have co-organized 15 digital brokerages, a number of which are still ongoing. And we've delivered multiple partnership agreements between Canadian and European companies that have resulted in both new jobs and the maintenance of existing jobs, which is one of the main goals of the Enterprise Europe Network's activities. So I guess that's kind of the short and sweet version of what I have to share today. As I said, I encourage all companies to find their local EEN representatives and to begin a dialogue with them and see how the Enterprise Europe Network might be able to help you in your goals. And you're also, of course, welcome to contact me at any point. I'm happy to direct you further if there's something that I can help with. So thank you very much for your attention, and I will turn it back to the moderators.
Dear distinguished guests, my name is Antonis Gravanis. I'm the Director of Small and Medium-Sized Enterprises Division in Enterprise Greece. Once more, we thank you for, we thank the participants and of course the speakers for the very informative presentations. There are some questions that we believe will enrich our today's webinar. And the first question is for Ms. Kina, our commercial attaché in Ottawa. Ms. Kina, our food exports are of great importance for Greece, and therefore, please tell us a little bit more about the trends in the Canadian food industry for 2021.
Well, thank you very much for the question. I believe that Marta had touched up on this subject as well in her presentation. I can share my point of view based on market studies and on my experience as a consumer in the Canadian market. I believe that there is a significant rise in demand for functional foods, such as fiber and protein-enriched foods, corn chips, juices, and so on, with added probiotics. There is, in general, a trend for products that boost the immune system, that reduce stress levels and improve wellness. This is one trend. What's more, another category, again in rising demand in Canada, is the veggie revolution. All the more people prefer vegetarian and vegan foods. So if your products are already vegetarian or vegan, don't forget to mention it on the packaging. It really, really counts. Canadians, are also very much interested in the origin of the ingredients you're using, in the ethical conditions under which your products are made, and their environmental impact. To this end, they are very much concerned about the packaging, which should be environmentally friendly. Thus, packaging plays an important role in consumers' decision to buy a certain product. Consumers are also interested in learning about your company, your mission and values. It really counts also. And one last thing, due to COVID-19 and the closure of restaurants, a lot more Canadians cook at home. So home cooking is getting all the more quite trendy here in Canada. And there is a growing demand for meal kit services and solutions to simplify home meal preparation. In addition, well, they prefer unusual flavor combinations and in general, try to offer products that recreate the experience of eating out in a restaurant. I think these are the most important trends in the food sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hina. From what you just said, I believe that there are many opportunities for Greek exporters. We have exports in ready-made meals, so I think there's an opportunity for more exports. Following is a question for Ms. Middlebrough. Ms. Middlebrough, let's suppose that I have a contract to do business in Canada and I need to send some employees. Does CETA help with this kind of labor mobility?
Yes, Antonis, it does. I'm very glad that you asked this question because very often exporters are faced with precisely this sort of situation. They will be exporting, imagine a very complex piece of machinery that requires installation or perhaps even training of local personnel who will then be running the machinery. Previously, it had been rather difficult to send someone, a human, along with the product to install and explain. So what we try to do in CETA is to facilitate this type of labor mobility that companies typically would accompany exporting. CETA allows for easily obtainable business visas for business people and these type of personnel for up to 3 months. It also provides for business visas for professionals, including lawyers, accountants, to come and provide their services in Canada. And last but not least, the most flexible point of labor mobility that the agreement now offers is for so-called intra-corporate transferees, which would cover also your situation. Where you can temporarily transfer an employee who remains an employee of your home company back home, but you can temporarily transfer. You do not have to do what is in Canada called a labor market assessment, where normally you would have to prove that you cannot find anybody in Canada to carry out that job. CETA means that for EU exporters and their EU employees, you no longer have to do that. You can simply send them for a short period of time to carry out the task and then come back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Middlebrough. Definitely, those are good news. It will encourage more business between Europe and Canada, more investments. The next question is for Mr. Kriaris. Mr. Kriaris, you know very well, Greek wine is considered to be of the best in Europe, and hopefully we expect to have more exports in the future. So can you please elaborate more on the procedure required for a product to be listed in LCBO?
Hello, welcome back. I would love to do that actually. So essentially, getting a product listed at the LCBO is a definite challenge. Part of the reason is because the Greek category as a whole in the generalist sector is still relatively small in comparison to other European countries. We don't expect it to be as big as Italy, of course, but the reality is the generalist sector specifically is still quite small and not always growing. That being said, attaining a listing at the LCBO is doable. Many people make submissions, many people get their wines listed, but at the same time, many wines actually fail and don't last on the shelves. So the biggest challenge, not necessarily getting the listing at the LCBO. You can do that if you have a good quality price ratio. Bear in mind, we're competing with wines from all over the world, so price is a very key factor when you're on the shelf. So generalist, typically in Ontario, that is, typically means wines $14.95 Canadian dollar retail or lower, which means you're not going to pass €3 a bottle sort of thing as an export price. And the big thing is not necessarily getting the wine listed. The big thing is, what do you do when the wine is listed? So once a wine is listed at the LCBO on the general list, it takes a lot of time, months, years, to get as many store listings as humanly possible in the liquor boards so that the product is available. You can't sell what you don't have, of course. Number two is to have education done at the retail store level with the product consultants, LCBO buyers, etc., LCBO managers, and then to build the brand through social media networks, which has become a very huge thing here in Canada. And lastly, to work on building the brand in the on-premise sector. As I mentioned in my slide, we rely heavily on the on-premise sector, fine, but we also need to keep in mind that that does account for about 1/3 of all business for the food and beverage industry for Greece. So it is an important part of the business. But that being said, it's what we do with the listing once you attain it that is more important than actually getting the listing. So I hope that answered everyone's questions. I'm always free to have any follow-up emails or phone calls, anybody they'd like, if they have more questions for this matter.
Thank you very much for your input. Definitely very interesting what you just mentioned. And last but not least, a question for Dr. Peterson. Dr. Peterson, is there a cost to services provided by Enterprise Europe Network Canada?
Hello. Generally speaking, that's a very common question, and I'm glad that you asked it. Generally speaking, no. The services provided through the Enterprise Europe Network are free of charge for companies, especially in Europe. So that's not something companies need to worry about. They're welcome to approach the Enterprise Europe Network, and we'll do our best to help you, and there is no cost.
Thank you very much, Dr. Peterson. And now is the time to close the webinar. We hope that our participants found useful and informative our today's session. Once more, a big thank you for your participation, and please stay tuned for our next Doing Business In. Stay all safe, and all Greeks participants have a wonderful Chiknopemti.